Welcome back, class. We're still on myology, and we're going to finish this series by talking about muscle hypertrophy and atrophy. Now, when something gets larger and thicker and bigger, it hypertrophies, like going to the gym and exercising, right? You get muscle growth from heavy training. You get an increase in the diameter of the muscle, you get an increase in the number of the myofibrils, go through what's called mitochondrial biogenesis, which is an amazing concept. Increased mitochondria is called mitochondrial biogenesis. So if you go from being a couch potato to wanting to move and exercise, like when you're a couch potato and you're not really doing much, you're always tired. I don't have energy. Now, there's a time where every couch potato gets motivated. They go, the toughest part is just getting to the gym. But like once you get to the gym or once you get moving and exercising, all of a sudden you come alive. You have more energy because the movement, right, just from moving and biking and exercising and resistance training, that alone increases the number of mitochondria. If you increase the number of mitochondria, right, if you increase the number of those, you increase the number of factories that make ATP. So now you have more energy centers making more energy for you. So the busier you are, the more you're exercising, the more energy you can have. Now, obviously, if you're going too hard, too intense, too much of something and too little of something is always no good for you, right? Too much vitamin D or too little vitamin D is no good for you. Too much water and too little water is not good for you. Too much protein, too little protein is not good for you. Too much exercise, too little exercise, not good for you. Exercise is actually dose relevant for each individual. Okay? You can train and exercise too much and accelerate the time it takes to get to the end of the dash, and you can actually die sooner. You can create a lot of what we call reactive oxygen species from the mitochondria becoming damaged and overworking. All right. Okay. So the key here, exercise increases the size of muscle. You can increase the number of mitochondria and you can increase your energy within moderation, nothing at the extremes. If you don't do anything, muscles atrophy, they waste away. This happens to people if they're chronically ill, if they're in a hospital and they're lying in a bed for weeks on end and they can't move, then their limbs, because if you don't use it, you lose it, right? We call that Wolff's Law. Wolff's Law is when there's stress and resistance on your body, it builds up and reacts and gets stronger. Whether we're talking about muscles, whether we're talking about bones, or whether we're talking about your immune system. The more it's stressed, the stronger it becomes. Okay? So atrophy is the lack of muscle activity, and when you have too little muscle activity, you get reduced muscle size, reduced muscle tone, and power. That happens if you have a nerve impingement, if you have a herniated disc pressing on a nerve, or arthritis with a bone spur hitting a nerve, or you have an incident or accident, break a bone, and it severs a nerve. Over time, if the muscle is not getting the electrical activity, it's going to atrophy. Now, between the ages of 30 and 50, about 10% of muscle tone is replaced by fibrous connective tissue and fat tissue. And between the ages of 50 and 80, another 40% of our muscle tissue is replaced. This is why it's so important that as a person ages, they must have a gym membership. If not, walking every day, swimming every day, biking every day, the muscular system must be used. Okay? The consequence of The destruction of this is that over time, the muscle strength and flexibility is going to decrease. The individual's reflexes will slow down, and the slow oxidative fiber numbers will increase. What I do with my patients when I first meet them, the exam starts with a handshake. I want to feel the strength of their hand. I turn over their hand so I can inspect the nails. We went over that in another lecture, how you can pick up a lot of different metabolic diseases just by looking at the nails, by their shape, their color, and their texture. Now, these are the metacarpal bones. Adjacent to it, these are tendons. So you can see the tendons. In between the bones and tendons, in here, you have interossei muscles and lumbrical muscles. When your body starts using your own tissue for fuel, it breaks down protein for energy. And when it breaks down your own body for fuel and breaks down your own muscle, we call that sarcopenia. And that's why protein consumption as people get older is so very important. And with that, people have to keep in mind as people get older, the lining of the stomach thins. And in the stomach is where people produce hydrochloric acid. And the hydrochloric acid in the stomach is needed to break down the protein. So when people eat, many times they get bloated because they don't have enough acid in the stomach to break down the protein. And that just gets them gassy. And then they end up passing the proteins out through bowel movements instead of breaking them down properly. So as people get older, keep this in mind if you're getting into healthcare. Yes, protein consumption is important, but as they get older, they may need digestive enzymes. Very important to take. And usually after the age of 40, 45, that's when people start noticing that they can't tolerate certain foods as they used to, and the stomach needs a little assistance. So digestive enzymes from really good nutraceutical companies are essential. So hand strength is very important, looking and making sure that the tone here looks level and you don't get what I call hills and valleys, right? When you look at the hand, you don't want to see these type of indentations. Those are the valleys, which are these valleys here between the bones. That's the atrophy. And then what I use is a dynamometer to measure the hand strength. And when the individual squeezes this, this main needle will move up, and then there's a secondary needle that you can see right here that's a thinner needle. When they squeeze it, this one moves up, and then when they release, it moves back, but the marker stays at the highest position, the strongest position. So very important to use a dynamometer to check hand strength, right and left hand, and compare them, make sure they are symmetrical. Another key is the exam should also start observing that patient as they get up and out of the chair. Can they get up and out of a chair by just using the strength of their legs? Do they have enough quadricep and hamstring strength to lift their body, or is this person pushing on the hand rests? Do they have to put their hands on the arm rests and push themselves up because they don't have enough power of their legs? That's something else I look for. If they have weak quads and weak legs, they're going to have weak stability and weak balance. And we know what happens when people fall is that typically within a few months after a fall, things don't look too promising. Okay, we hope you found that interesting. Hope you learned something.